Hello, I start video now. Hello, and welcome to my little corner of the internet. My name's Katherine, and I shall be your hostess. Think of what I'm doing as a semi-formal vlog, because my house isn't that clean. Today, we are going to be talking about what life was like realizing you were a homosexual before the internet era. So, I first kissed a girl when I was 15. It was 1988. It was dreamy. It was everything I'd ever dreamed about, because in fact, I had been dreaming about that moment for 2 years. I know I wanted to kiss a girl since I was 13. When I discovered my sexuality, I knew I was gay. I think, looking back in childhood photos, I probably knew I was gay before that. But I didn't know what gay was. Because that's kind of the problem in discovering that you're homosexual before the internet. It just wasn't there. There was no material. There were two sources of material. The first one being porn. The second one was the library. And so at 13, when I first realized, I might like the ladies, I went to the library. I'm going to the library. Oh, I'm going to a card catalog, because there were no computers back then to look up things in the library. I mean, there were, but you had to have a really on-it library that was state-of-the-art. For the rest of us, we had card catalogs. They were little cards in boxes that had little Dewey Decimal System and the alphabet, and then you looked up things. You had to find the letter, and so, I can only imagine that, a lot of little gay kids going to the library. I'm going to the library. I'm 13. I need to figure things out. And so we're at the library, and, we're sneaky into the card catalog looking for lesbian. Oh, looking. And then comes a nice, friendly librarian. Hey, can I help you with anything? And you're like, oh shit. Inside, panic. Yes, I have to do a report on Lebanon for my geography class. Can you help me? And she's like, yes. And then she'll take the card catalog and realize that the B and the S, is not that close to one another, so you were probably looking something else up. But if you had a nice librarian, she would just kindly point you in the direction of Lebanon, and you could try again another day. I can only imagine that I'm not the only one that had to do a report or two on Lebanon. There are probably many other children out there, young gays. But today, it's totally different. Totally different. And that is because of the internet. Now, you have this magical universe from Google, and you can figure things out. Yes, you can. Google knows all. Of course, the search results in certain languages still come up to lesbian porn, which is the other thing. You can't really learn a lot about homosexuality from porn. Because it's all porn made for straight men that want to see things that you really don't want to do and don't quite get you off, especially in the 80s. I'm not saying there's not specialized porn in the 80s. It existed. I know now, because I got in my time machine and went back. But I actually had it easier than gay men, because in my world, I just had to figure out a way to sneak into the video section and check something out. Because that's another thing. There wasn't Netflix or Pornhub, because Netflix would, but Pornhub or easy access to porn. You had to go to a physical store and do the walk of shame into a section, and then get that video because it was blocked off, and then, hide it under other videos. But the store clerk knew. And the store clerk, at 13, you couldn't do it. 15 or 16, you could probably get away with it. But when you're young, and this is what we're talking about, the first discovery between like 13 and 15, when you're like, something might be happening. But gay guys at that age, at that time, had to go to specialty stores. I have to admit, that would be really scary because you didn't even know where the specialty stores were until you met another gay person. Think about that. You had to know a gay person to find other gay people when you're young. When you're older, you could just go to a gay bar. But really, at that time, there was a big span between, say, age 13 and 21 in the US, where I grew up, where you had no resources. Later, as I got slightly older, of course, there's more and more resources that come with mobility, and cars, and cafes, and things like that. However, when you're really young, there was nothing. The other thing there was none of was just general media representation. There were no gays, lesbians, anything like that in common media. There was no point of reference. And if there was, it did not end well. It did not end well for years. Even to this modern era, the tragic gay love story still exists. Gay, lesbian, trans, it's this trope, this narrative of, loneliness at the end. However, I'm going to say, I'm not about loneliness, but drawing back, that it actually did leave me feeling really lonely and isolated, which carried on into my adult life. And I think a lot of the gay community actually has that, of my generation and older, pre-internet gays, of this loneliness and isolation even when you found friends in the gay community. Like, I only know a few people that really feel embraced by the gay community. There's this perpetual outsiderness syndrome that comes. And it's really hard and uncomfortable because, like, the formative years of a lot of our lives were filled with loneliness. And, the rejection of the culture, the heterosexual normative culture was lonely. So a lot of us rejected them at the same time, but then really had a hard time feeling inclusive anywhere else. And I think that's a lot of, like, a weird thing in our community. Because I am actually part of this community, even though sometimes I don't feel like it. But I think it's a holdout from the loneliness we all felt in our developmental years. I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for me. And I can say I certainly felt it. I felt lonely. I felt isolated. And I'm not saying that kids don't feel that today, because clearly they do, because gay suicide and trans suicide is one of the highest rates of any. So there is still loneliness and isolation. But where it has gotten better is access to information. And knowing if you can make it through, if your family are assholes, that first bit of time, that it does get better. And that there's hope. And I'm sure that there is an entire slew of issues that I don't realize because I don't have them that the younger generation does. Just like the older generation from me, there's a slew of issues that they have that I have no idea about. But it was difficult. It was hard. But it was also fun because, eventually you meet your first little group of gays and you're like, woohoo, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And then you have your first girlfriend and your first crush and your first everything. Sometimes your first crush is better than your first girlfriend. Sometimes your first kiss is better than your first girlfriend. Sometimes your second girlfriend is better than your first, or your 300th. You never know. It's a numbers game. However, when I was 15 and I was kissing Jennifer, it was really the greatest moment because I never thought it would happen. When I was a little 13-year-old gay, when I was a little 14-year-old gay, I never thought I would get the opportunity to kiss a girl. And, I was thinking, oh my God, if I can, I'll die happy. And you know what? I raised the bar. And then after kissing, I wanted to sex. And then after sex, I wanted a relationship. And after a relationship, I wanted marriage. But that didn't come for ages, and certainly not with Jennifer and probably a billion partners later. Well, not a billion. Not a billion. More than four. More than four. But then you break up. You get together. Trauma. Heartache. Oh, this isn't ending well. We'll see. All right, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Much appreciated.